Government Order of the Day number 1.
Greater Christchurch Regeneration Bill, second reading.
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, it's not usual for the Minister proposing a bill to speak in the second reading, but this is a bill that is somewhat unique and I think continues the historically strong support that this Parliament has given Christchurch through the difficult years post the earthquake sequence beginning in 2000.
The bill will be read a second time.
Well, there you go, sir. It just shows anybody who's been here for any length of time can demonstrate a bit of an experience occasionally. Mr Speaker, I move that the bill be now read a second time. Mr Speaker, as I was saying, this is, I think, an historic bill for the House, and the events of the last couple of weeks where parties have come together to discuss the final shape of the bill, albeit post the Select Committee stage, has been particularly pleasing. I'd like to acknowledge the Chair of the Select Committee for the work that he and his members did on this bill. It was in hearing the submissions that some of the complexities that needed to be dealt with in the bill were brought to light. The genesis of the bill, though, Mr Speaker, started quite some time ago when it was decided that there should be an orderly transition for the government to exit some of its more prominent roles in the recovery of Christchurch. So in December of 2014, under the chair of Dame Jenny Shipley, there was an advisory board set up, and they were asked to consider a number of parameters that should be given a fair old going over before any transition plan could be put together, and then they were asked to produce a report that would indicate a direction moving forward. That committee had on it, or that advisory board had on it, the Mayor of Christchurch, the Mayor of Waimakariri, the Mayor of Selwyn, and the current Chair of ECAN, as well as people from the business sector and a number from the NGO sector as well. And the people who were on that board, I think, did a splendid job of thinking about the state of the city at present, particularly in a governance sense, and looking at what might be necessary moving forward. So what we've seen in the last 10 days, where MPs have repeatedly met, discussed and agreed, is a continuation of a consultation process that has gone on for a very long period of time. Mr Speaker, the arrangements that are now going to be presented as a supplementary order paper to this particular bill when the House resumes after the recess in committee, I think is going to put into the statute a series of arrangements that will work well for the future of the city. It is particularly, I say again, Mr Speaker, pleasing that we have been able to reach a broad consensus on how that should shape up. And I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the hard work and actually the determined work, I should say, of all the MPs who were party to that. Dennis O'Rourke from New Zealand First, Eugenia Sage from the Green Party, Turo Flavel from Māori Party, David Seymour from the ACT Party, Megan Woods from the Labour Party, and I think that might cover it. But my point is, sir, when we were in those discussions, the general perception of Parliament as being an adversarial place was for a time set aside while there were proper discussions about what the consequences of any law might be. Now, I have to say, it's not, for example, in a shape that I would think in every way meets the requirements that I would see necessary, but then I think every other person in the room would have come up with the same conclusion. And that, I think, can give us all comfort that we're probably in about the right space. The most salient points that have come out of those discussions relate to the provisions that will go into the supplementary order paper that effectively strengthen public input into any of the regeneration plans that will be developed in Christchurch City. It will strengthen the leadership of the new organisation, Regenerate Christchurch, and it will put a greater degree of constraint on the exercise of ministerial powers to alter those plans under Section 42 of the Act. Mr. Speaker, those regeneration plans are you'd almost say a copy of the recovery plan process that have been in place over the last few years. But essentially the bill recognises that while Christchurch had its emergency and then has gone through a period of recovery and continues to do so, that we're now at a point where the consequences of the earthquake have made such significant changes to the city and the greater Christchurch area that sharper processes are going to be necessary to ensure that we do develop new areas or redevelop existing areas or renew existing areas in a way that make them most amenable to people's ongoing living opportunities. So while there will be some who look at this and say you're replacing one bureaucracy that is centrally controlled by government with a whole lot of smaller bureaucracies that are controlled by local organisations with lesser direct authority, I think that they've missed the point that there are some very separate considerations that need to be put in place. So Regenerate Christchurch becomes the prime body for taking an overview of the city and its surrounds and making determinations about where some of the efforts of local authorities, of individual developers or others who have an interest in an area can be concentrated, and then coming up with plans that will enable that to occur on a much more rapid basis than might be through the Local Government Act, or for that matter, some aspects of the RMA. And then you have, sir, an organisation the Council is setting up called Development Christchurch Limited. That is designed to be a front-face, first point for people who are coming to the city who want to invest. One of the things that I hear over and over, and have done for the last few years, is that people come into town and say, right, we want to do something, and then there's nowhere to go, no one to talk to, and nothing gets done. I think, sir, that is an overstatement of how things are, but the council certainly does have a desire to see things move, and I think the first thing that Development Christchurch has been involved in is the big bike park on the Port Hills, which the rest of the country will soon learn is an absolutely splendid facility, and I'm sure there'll be many come to Christchurch because of it. There is also, sir, going to be an organisation referred to as Otakaro Limited. Everyone will know that the government has invested heavily in Christchurch, does own a lot of land known as the Red Zone, does own a lot of land in the CBD where the different precincts are being established, and they will hold the interest that the government has in ensuring that the anchor projects which remain at this point unstarted are started, and that those that are underway continue to their completion at as speedy a pace as possible. And we've cross-pollinated all of those boards, sir, with the chairs of each, so that there is a good understanding and good working arrangement between those groups. I think the structure recognises local autonomy, recognises the difference between a single body that does everything and the specifics that need to be dealt with, and I'm confident that they'll be able to work together in a very, very positive way. Mr. Speaker, this is, as I said before, an historic bill. It is part of the efforts that this Parliament is making in support of Canterbury, and it continues the unanimous support and generous support that the House has given since the days post-2011. Mr. Speaker, the discussion that we will have in the committee stage will make very clear, I hope, the unique nature of the structure that we've all agreed will be best for Christchurch. And I want to once again thank the members of Parliament and the spokespeople who have been involved in those discussions. I'd like to thank the officials for their forbearance with us all. Politicians are very good at coming up with great ideas, and then a little less reluctant to accept that some of them might not be as good as they possibly could be. But we were well served by officials from both the Christchurch City Council and from Sarah and Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, and I thank them for their work and look forward to the committee stage, where I'm sure they'll be on hand to answer any questions that those perhaps not quite so close to the process may have. Mr Speaker, I do commend this bill to the House. It is a good bill and well worth the House's unanimous support.